We'll go ahead and get started. Going to start with our usual required announcement. Get that done. We are holding a virtual live meeting of the Town of Westborough's Diversity and Inclusion Committee right now on September 17th at 3 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Westborough Diversity and Inclusion Committee is being conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westborough's website at www.town.westborough.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so by watching on YouTube/Westborough TV or on Westborough TV at Verizon Channel 28 or Charter Channel 192. Or folks may watch a recorded version on the website at westboroughtv.org under the tab Meetings on Demand. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort is being made to ensure that the public can adequately address the proceedings in real time, access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So, and with that, we begin. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see you. I do know that Mike Daniels will be joining us a bit late today. And otherwise, I think all of us are here. And we also have a guest with us today who will be presenting and answering our questions later on the agenda. I think we're getting to know each other a bit, but for the sake of the public who may be viewing, I hope you won't mind if we go ahead and do introductions again. I will name folks around the screen as I see them. And I invite you, if you wish to share, in addition to your name and your representation on this committee, if you wish to share your gender pronouns, you are welcome to do so, but it is per your discretion. So I'll begin. My name is Kara Presley, and I'm the chairperson of this committee, but I also am the director of the town's Youth and Family Services Department, and I use gender pronouns she, her, and hers. Daniel.
Hi there, everybody. I am Daniel Barber, the circulation supervisor at the Westborough Public Library, and I am here at the library now, which is different than other meetings, so it's good to see everybody.
Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I am Sarah Connors. I am here representing the Westborough Public Schools. I am an ESL teacher over at Hastings Elementary School, and I use the pronouns she, her, hers.
Kim.
Hi, Kim Foster. I am the assistant town manager.
Alma.
Alma DeMonch, I'm the executive director of the Senior Center.
Shelby.
Hi, my name is Shelby Marshall. I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen, and I use the pronouns she, her, and hers.
Rana.
Hi, I'm Rana Rappaport. I am a community member of the committee.
Ema.
Hi, my name is Ema Ness, and I'm a new member of this committee. I'm also a Westborough resident and a nurse leader, and I use the pronouns she, her, and hers.
And Ryan.
Hi everyone, I'm Ryan. I'm a new member of this committee. I'm a recent Westborough High School graduate and a former member of the Youth Commission and Cultural Council, which I'm currently on. My pronouns are he, him, and his.
And I do realize that we're missing Shazia today, so I don't know if Shazia will be joining us or not, but the rest of us are here, and it's good to see you. I will, Ala, if you don't mind, I'll share your introduction for, I'll hold off on your introduction until you present to us, but I just want to point out to everyone that Ala Baranovsky has joined us as well, and she'll be talking to us later. All right. We have a full agenda today, but I'm hoping I left enough time that we can kind of dive a little deeper into a few items than we've been able to in the past. So I'm just going to quickly review the agenda and what to expect today. We're going to spend a good chunk of time talking about this committee's purpose, what our process is, what our priorities are, kind of get some clarity going about that. We're going to hear from Ala about the community proposal to have a Black Lives Matter mural in town. We're going to follow up on previous proposals that we've heard about and considered. And I have put in what I plan to have as a standing agenda item, which is a space to talk about community issues and announcements. And this is a little bit open to hear what you all have heard or what you have to say and what has come up since we last met as issues that we might want to think about or address on this committee. And then before we adjourn, I just want to kind of loop back and make sure we're all clear about what our next steps are. I'm going to try to make that a standing item too, so we kind of are really concrete and clear at the end about what we'll be doing between now and the next meeting. All right, great. So just to start off our conversation about our committee's purpose, process, and priorities, I just want to review the statement of purpose that was created at the inception of this committee back in 2016. And that is that the purpose is to review town services, to ensure services are provided equally and are accessible to all residents. And further, to identify ways to promote increased diversity and inclusiveness in town services, employment, and volunteer opportunities. You all saw, I sent to you along with the agenda a couple of very cute, but I think incredibly poignant graphics that I'll share with folks that are watching as well, just as a reminder. These are graphics that define the issue, the term equity. And as we have seen with the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, there's been, this word is I guess people might see it as a buzzword, but it's a real word too that means something. And it means something that we don't often think about. It's different than the word equality. So we have this first graphic of the leaning tree that defines 4 words. One is inequality, which is the unequal access to opportunities. Equality, which is evenly distributed tools and assistance, which, as you can see in this graphic, don't quite help with the access to opportunities issue. And then we have equity, which is custom tools that identify and address inequalities. And in our ideal world, we are striving for justice, which would be fixing the systems that in a way that would offer equal access and tools and opportunities. So that's sort of the ideal world we're looking for. And I like this one too. It's something very familiar to Massachusetts sports fans, a view of a baseball field in which the first image assumes if we are treating a situation equally, we provide equal tools, the same tools for every person. Yet, as you can see in this graphic, not everybody is able to access the ball game with the same tools. The second tool talks about, this is what equity is. It's identifying where there is unequal or where there is not equal access and creating the tools to create access. So not the same tools for everybody, but personalized and customize and specialize tools to ensure equal access. And then again, the ideal world, we've taken down all the barriers that prevent access, sort of changing the system. So I share this with all of you because the way that I look at the work that we're doing is through a lens of equity. And I want to think with you together about all the work that we do and how are we thinking about access. The purpose of this group was, the group was established to ensure access, equal access, but I just want to add on that piece, that layer of equitable access as well to all residents. So with that, I sort of want to just open up a conversation to you about how do we want to do this as we continue to go. I have a few kind of brainstorming questions that I thought of to get us thinking about where we want to go from here. I'm just going to throw those questions out there. They don't have to be questions we're going to answer automatically, but just to kind of get us thinking on the same page. The questions that have come up for me include, in addition to this purpose statement, do we want or need a mission statement? Do we want or need a statement of our values? Another question is, who drives the focus of this committee? Is it driven by issues that are brought up by the town administration, the town manager's office, or others that are employees of the town? Are we driven by issues brought to us by the Board of Selectmen? Are we driven by residents? A combination of those? How do we kind of have clarity about that? And then how do we prioritize the issues that come in front of us? Should we take a proactive look at town policies, procedures, and services on our own initiative rather than waiting for issues to come to us? With any new issues that come before us, should we have a clear and stated policy or procedure so folks know when they're coming to the Diversity and Inclusion Committee with an issue, they know how it's going to be treated? And how do we know when we're done with any particular issue? And then finally, and probably a conversation for further down, is a question about what other towns are doing so we don't reinvent the wheel or start from scratch necessarily. I have obtained a list from our friends in the town of Medway. They have shared with me a list. They've compiled a list of lots of towns in the Commonwealth who have similar committees to this. So I have not started researching those, but I do have a list of them. So those are my food for thought for you all. And I'd love to hear from you about where we should start in that conversation.
So I don't have a place to start, but if you wouldn't mind going back to the apple image just for a moment, because I want to point out something and just be kind of naked, if you will, in sharing my thoughts. So when I can you know, zoom in if I need to. Yeah, no. So I think what you have here is fine, but I will be really honest with you. When I saw it in sort of these images remind me of The Giving Tree, which is one of my favorite books. And when I saw it and I looked at it, I gotta be really honest with you. I skipped right over inequality and went to equality and equity, and sort of visually I understood the two middle ones. Mm-hmm. But when I looked at, I had to go back at inequality and say, I'm not sure why this is in what is unequal about it. And it was the leaning tree. I had to go back and go, oh, the tree is leaning, because I thought someone's getting an apple by chance. And I share that only to sort of illustrate how blind we can be to what may be so obvious to some people and not to others. And so certainly as I went back, I was like, oh, duh, the tree is leaning. So this person has a, maybe a better chance, or, whatever. The apple's not gonna be bruised when they get it. I don't know, because it's a shorter drop. But, and honestly, I didn't realize that until I went down and got to the equity image. And then of course the justice, where the tree has been corrected, which is great symbolically of, the systemic issue being fixed. So I just wanted to share that, because I think I think by sharing, sometimes we sort of recognize the, I don't know, our own, you know, failings or you know, areas that we can work on. And I think we have to continue to be open to that. So that's it.
I really appreciate that, Shelby. Thank you.
I guess echoing Shelby's point, I also agree with that image totally. It brought me recently, I was, in my studies, I was talking about implicit racism, and that image was perfect for that. And I'm glad that Shelby brought out that point that the tree was leaning, and the last image of that systemic piece is bringing out those boards to straighten out that tree so that it's even and equal for all of everyone. And so it brought me to thinking about how racism is a systemic issue, and that, you know, in moments of awareness, it's important to have those moments of awareness and reflection on our behaviors, because many times when we're stressed or overwhelmed, that's when the implicit bias or feelings come out, and they're not intentional. That's why they're implicit. So, and those are the ones that are very important, that I believe sort of are the foundations or the constructs of the systemic problem. So I think just breaking those down is very important. And to start off, to break them down is just being aware and mindful and asking questions.
Thank you, Ima.
I wonder, you said that Medway had compiled a list of towns that had other committees. I would be happy to make a couple of calls, you know, to a few of those committees and see what they're doing, because maybe that, you mentioned not reinventing the wheel, and that would be certainly, I would be very interested in that, because we keep trying to figure it out. Maybe somebody's figured it out already and we can learn from what they figured out. My 2 cents.
So I think I want to be clear. I don't think the Board of Selectmen should drive this. So they might provide input. They might be aware of a situation that gets referred to this committee, but they should not drive it. I think that the work of this committee should come through a number of different venues. Call it a 4-legged stool, 3-legged, I don't know however many legs we come up with that are equal. I'm not being funny about that, but trying to inject a little humor in the work that we're doing. I think the community input, you know, town services are interactive with members of our community, and so community input is critically important. I think the input of the town, of the employees, and when I think about that, like educating, like what sort of tools do our town employees need so that they can better understand the issues and how to better deliver services in ways that are more equal. How can they hire and maybe reach out to hiring through their hiring practices, reach a different group or extended group that maybe traditional pathways wouldn't kind of bring them to. So I think both of those groups can provide input here. And obviously this committee in and of itself, you know, could come up with ideas. And I think we already have several on those on the plate, which I know are listed on the agenda, but that's sort of how I don't think it's a one size fits all.
And I've been operating under that assumption that we are informed by all of those parties, and we hadn't said explicitly out loud what drives our work. So I wanted to just put it on the table. Sarah, was it you? Who else was gonna? No, okay. So to Rana's point about checking with other towns, I too thought that that would be useful for us to contact other towns and find out what they're doing. What would be helpful for me is to have a list of concrete questions that we have, so that if we divvy up the task of calling different towns or emailing different towns, we would be asking the same questions. Kim, did you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I know that was done in the past. I was actually contacted. I believe it was Mike who was involved in that in the past. I know when I was in another community, they were reaching out. So that might be a starting point to see what questions were asked in the past and to maybe build off that rather than duplicate work that's already been done.
Was that like probably a year to a year and a half ago, do you think?
Yes.
Okay. So I was part of that. And that was when we were specifically looking at issues of language access. And so we were.
Maybe then it was sooner than that because I think it was broader.
Right.
Or I'm sorry,
Okay,
it may have been earlier than that.
Okay.
And I realize
for clarifying.
It's a different time and I think there's value in contacting, but I think it's also valuable to know what was done in the past.
For sure. Rana or Shelby, or Alma, do you remember more context around that by chance? Okay. So we can wait until Mike gets here. I know that Mike and I, last year, we both made efforts to contact a number of communities to learn about what they were doing around language access plans. And we didn't get too far, but we did get a little bit of information, but we had pretty narrow scope of questions at that point. Whereas if I were to reach out to folks today, I would want to know sort of who's on, like, is this a public or private, like, is this a town initiated committee or is it privately initiated? So Medway reached out to me asking these same questions, and they were put together by just residents who were interested in influencing school policy and working with the school committee specifically. And now they are evolving into being a town, they're gonna have a mix of town employees and town representatives. And so I'm curious, just what's the makeup of the different groups and how are they appointed? I'm interested in what kinds of issues they deal with and what kind of decision-making power they have, or what kind of just decisions they're making and who they're communicating those decisions to. What other questions should we be asking?
How did they reach people? The question we constantly ask is how are they able to communicate with people in the town, etc.
Yeah.
What modes do they use for that?
Yeah. So the outreach piece of it and the communication with the public.
Right.
I think I'd also be interested to know like what their mission statements say, if we are lacking a piece or if they have another idea of what we should be doing in the town. So trying to figure out what exactly they do in their towns would be helpful.
I'd also be interested in knowing what they consider to be completion of their own tasks. So do they stick to a task for years, like on end, or do they focus on one issue at a time and consider complete after they accomplish a number of steps related to it? I would be interested in knowing how they, as you said, prioritize their issues and knowing when they're complete, when they're done with those.
Thank you. So given the chiming in, it sounds like several of you do think that this would be a worthwhile task for us to pursue. May I just I don't think we need to vote on it, but is there anybody who thinks that this is not something that we should do? Just want to get more input about taking the time and effort to do this. Kim?
Yeah, go ahead, Shelby.
I don't think, I do think that there's value in doing it. What I would say though is that I trust, I'm so excited to see a full body here. I trust that we are a very capable group with lots of diverse experiences. And so what I'd suggest is, I wouldn't want to get bogged down in sort of some like research project into a bunch of other communities. I might suggest that a small group, call it a subcommittee, who's interested in kind of getting together and coming back to this group with, if we want a mission statement, or I love the idea of a value statement. You know, I'm even thinking about our website, the town website, and the images, Kara, that you've shared with us. I mean, when we try to explain this complex topic, I think so many of us immediately these days in particular think about matters of racism, but there's ageism, there's sexism, there's like lots of isms, right? We all know that. But I think even just like our town website having kind of like the image to be able to speak to what kind of things is this group addressing, and what do we care about in a way that is obviously professional, but it's also kind of interactive. And to your point, it's like if you have ideas or concerning, again, I think the process of how the community engages with us is really important, and we should get there sooner than later. So I think the external research is helpful, but I think we've got plenty before us. And now that we have a full committee, let's dig in and do the work.
Agreed. Kim?
Yeah, I think much of what Shelby said is what I would echo. I don't want to feel like we're going out and searching for a focus or a purpose. I feel like we have a very well-defined purpose, and there's a lot there that we could dig into. And so I think it's valuable to see what other places are doing, but I would try to do that concurrently. And I don't want that to keep us from continuing to do. We have a number of issues before us, and I'd like to see us kind of keep moving forward. And again, I keep looking back at our stated purpose, and I think there's a lot there. And to be honest, I would be concerned if we make it too much, either broader or more expansive, that may be more than we as a volunteer committee can really handle.
Dan?
One other thing, I think the research could be very helpful finding out what other communities are doing, but I'd also want to look at the demographic of those communities so we're not steered astray, getting some tips from a community that doesn't really reflect our buildup now.
So one thing we could that's a great point, Dan. So one thing we could certainly look at as a reference point would be that the town has, for the past probably a year and a half now, started to use benchmark communities that represent kind of Westborough through a number of different measurements. To be honest with you, I'm not sure if the kind of ethnic, I know the socioeconomic component isn't, but I'm not sure if, Kim, if you know offhand if ethnic component was part of that. But a number of other factors have been used, and we've used it to look at our budgets and look at other departments and all of that. So that would be a great place to look at. I think it's like 16 different communities. So we could certainly start there as a place, as opposed to like 350 towns in Massachusetts. So, but it's a great point, and we'd want to understand that.
No, I really like that. I think that I don't have the list in front of me, but I think there's 20 towns listed, and these are not committees. This is Medway just put this together. Like I said, may I please have it? Would it be cheating if I take if you give it to me? And they said no, I could have it. But they've just listed websites. They don't even have contact people. So I agree wholeheartedly with what Kim and Shelby are saying. Let's not go down like a rabbit hole of trying to like learn everything we can about these committees. We are on a roll, and let's stay on a roll, like let's keep going. I trust that we'll do good work, and we may be inspired. And honestly, the opposite of what I'm hoping, that the opposite will happen from what Kim said. There's a risk that we could get all these ideas and want to and then dilute what we're doing by making things too broad. But what I'm actually hoping is that whether it's through inspiration from other towns or through our own work, that we hone in on what's the most important, that we really get focused and not try to be too broad. We can each go off and save the world in our own little corners and we'll have a shared focus in this venue.
One thing I would like to propose is maybe we just have a parking lot that we maintain as part of our minutes. So when we have good ideas and we share them, that we just kind of put them there. It doesn't mean we have to act on them. I don't think I shared this with folks last time, but it was Medford, was city adds ways to report civil rights complaints confidentially. So there was a little article. So it was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't think Westborough has that. And, so just again, so that when we're kind of going, wow, to Ryan's point, we've accomplished, you know, we did our 3 big things that went faster than we thought. What else are we going to kind of, you know, work on, or proactively looking at policies? So I think if we have kind of a parking lot, or like a, you know, and again, that's something we could have as part of our website, on the town's website, or document.
Love it. I agree. In fact, I have a couple things on my kind of list of things to bring up later that could be considered parking lot issues. So I like that we could just build that into our agenda. So time, I kind of want to stay on time, and I don't want to stay with this too much. So let's see.
So Kara, I'm sorry, what is the next step on this particular item?
Yeah, let's figure that out. So I would love I will compile the questions that we have just asked, like the things that we want to know from other towns, and send that and share that with you. And then Rana has volunteered, and I would accept other volunteers to just start plugging away at the list and getting answers to the questions. That's what I would say. And we might, you know, each month, maybe we'll get a hold of one town or get the information from one town. We all know that these processes can be slow. But does that seem reasonable, Rana, that you are volunteering to start plugging away? Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to take on that effort? And
I'll be happy to.
Okay, thank you.
You know what would be helpful? I wanted to know if maybe Kim does, or anybody does actually know anything about the demographics of these towns. So when there is a list that we get, if somebody maybe could annotate that quickly to see if they happen to know offhand what the demographics are. If not, but it would be helpful before starting out if someone already has that information. If not, but that's it.
I can also make phone calls.
Okay. So Rana, it looks like Shelby and Kim can kind of give you that. They'll also give us the benchmark list of similar communities, as well as what are the benchmark factors there. So we'll prioritize those communities first. I will share with you the list of communities, and then Sarah and Rana, I may have you two communicate with each other to divvy up who's gonna try which communities. Okay, thank you, Sarah and Rana. So we have, Kim's gonna share the benchmark towns with the group, which may include some demographic information. I'm gonna share the list of towns and websites with Rana and Sarah, and Rana and Sarah are gonna divide between them, and I will give you a list of the questions we just compiled. Okay. Great, good. On time. So Ala, it's your turn, and you have to forgive me because I've confused the heck out of you by telling you one time and then telling you another, and then realizing that my first timeline was correct. So I'm glad you're here and on
That's
time.
Okay. I use the time to catch up on some work while listening to you at the same time.
Great, thank you. So let me, I'm gonna have Ala introduce herself and who she represents her on your own, Ala, but I just wanna, just to show you where we are on the agenda, Ala's gonna talk to us about the proposal we reviewed last month, which was a proposal for a Black Lives Matter mural to be put in town. And that came from a group that Ala represents, which is We Care. And I'll let her tell us about that. And I also have shared with Ala, just a little bit more context. I reached out to stakeholders that we had named at the last meeting. So I've been in touch with Chris Payant, who's the director of the Department of Public Works. I've been in touch with Pat Purcell, the fire chief. I've been in touch with Jeff Laurie, the police chief. And we've made effort to contact the Cultural Council, but to no avail, I'm afraid. But the other 3 department heads I just mentioned did weigh in with some questions and input, which I shared ahead of this meeting with Ala. So I think Ala is prepared to speak to some of that, and I'll certainly be explicit about what that input was if necessary. And so Ala's just going to tell us a little bit, kind of summarize the project and tell us where she's coming from. And then this is really a time that's cut out for our questions and answers. So take it away, Ala.
Thank you, Kara. My name is Alla Baranovsky. Thank you, Kara, for introducing me. I represent an organization in town called We Care, which stands for Westborough Committee for Anti-Racism in Education. You might know us from a June event, a vigil in Bay State Common that drew a large number of people, something like between 600 and 700 people. We're also organizers and maintainers of the town's distributed little anti-racist library. And we're planning an event in October, an exchange of children's anti-racist literature. So that's the kind of work that we do. And what I'm here to talk to you about is what you have in your handouts, the PDFs from the last meeting there, is a request for a mural in town. And so I'm sure you have looked at the details, so I'm not going to recount them and spend the time on that. I am just going to say that, as you are indubitably aware, the Black Lives Matter movement has become, by recent estimates, the most numerous social movement in recent US history, right? We're all watching the headlines and tracking the headlines. I am well aware of my audience here. I know I don't need to recount the systemic injustices that are leading us to advocate for an action that would show solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. But what I am asking you to do here is to support us in having Westborough join this growing list of towns and cities around the country that are installing murals such as this one that signal solidarity with people of color, with their residents of color and people of color everywhere in the country. And if you've been following the headlines in the recent months, cities, as far apart as Birmingham, Alabama, and Berkeley, California, and St. Petersburg, Florida, and our own Worcester, Massachusetts have installed these amazing murals. I'm actually in New Hampshire right now, but we went to Montpelier, Vermont. We drove through it, couldn't get out because of COVID restrictions, but there is a Black Lives Matter mural right there facing the state building on the main street in town, and it's beautiful. And it's a beautiful, powerful site. So I'm asking for your public support as we take this issue to the select people in Westborough as the next step, asking for their approval. I would like to note, again, I think we said this the last time, but we are very flexible on details. Many of the questions that I'm sure are going to be asked in a few minutes can be answered with, we're very flexible. If it's not a road mural, we are more than okay with a wall mural. We are okay with seasons. We're okay with artistic choices. We're flexible on details and very open to feedback. And so at this point, any questions?
Let me start with the questions that were raised at our last meeting, Ala, as well as the questions that were raised by the department heads I mentioned. And I should say that we anticipated a lot of the questions that the chiefs and Chris Payant had, so we're all kind of on the same page. So Fire Chief Purcell just says that he would appreciate any assurances that whatever is happening during the time that the mural is being created, that there is a throughway for emergency vehicles as large as a fire truck. So that's one safety measure that he wanted to make sure was in place. Police Chief Laurie says, frankly, that he does not have on-duty personnel to provide road closures. He talked to the folks with the Worcester police and learned that when the Worcester mural was done, that there was a combination of city police who were on duty covering the overnight kind of drying time of the mural, but that a private company also paid for detail in Worcester. So, you know, Chief Laurie is saying they just don't have the personnel capacity on duty. And so they would have to like consider overtime, and they don't have a budget for that. So just real life restrictions of the police department at this time. Chief Laurie does say as the project moves forward, he will provide a detailed traffic plan to ensure that the artists, the volunteers, and the driving public are safe during the duration of the painting and drawing. So he would work with Chris Pant at the DPW to manage the traffic. Let me Rana, before I come to you, let me just get to the last of the director's comments. And then Public Works Director Chris Pant was specifically speaking to the statement in the proposal about the mural lasting a year and having questions about removal. And actually Chief Purcell talked to me about this too, is just wondering who would be responsible for removing the mural. How would that be funded? You know, what would be the process for that? Because for things like that in the past that have, not murals specifically, but the kinds of Chris and Pat were kind of anticipating, like this could be a lot of public effort to remove the mural. And then the questions that this committee posed were just thinking about the timeline. If you did indeed try to do this fall, would it be able to be appreciated and enjoyed, given that we could get early snow and the sand and salt and snow and ice could, you know, ruin the mural and just block it, make it hard to see. So just questions about that. And then the questions about safety regarding if traffic is slowing down or if pedestrians are slowing down to look at the mural, you know, what kinds of traffic safety issues or pedestrian safety issues might there be? And then an issue that beyond that, as far as safety, was a question about how is the group anticipating the public response, which could include, you know, gatherings of people either in support of the mural or in protest of the mural, any kind of, you know, not knowing if there would be any kind of protest or disruption or anything that could happen, and just what are the group's thoughts about that. So that's the end of my questions. I'm gonna call on Rana, and then we'll have you respond to those ones, Ala, and both of them will open. Rana.
My question, Kara, was when you were speaking to Chief Laurie, did either you or he mention maybe there would be policemen who would be willing to volunteer their time? And I wonder, as I was thinking about that, I actually wonder if a volunteer policeman can do what a policeman on duty can do. And I question.
I think so no, that was not a conversation, but it looks like Kim has input about that. Kim.
They wouldn't be able to. We've got contractual obligations. We've got fair labor standards issues, just on a kind of unfortunately, employees cannot volunteer their time to perform their job functions.
I thought that there might be legal issues. As I thought about it, I thought probably a legal.
No, good thought.
Mike, do you want to expand on that at all from a police person perspective?
No, Kim obviously hit the nail on the head. That's one of the things that came right up in my mind. So
thanks.
Yep.
All right. So Ala.
So I think that most of these questions are solvable by having a vertical mural instead of a horizontal one. Certainly traffic slowing down, if we're doing a mural on the side of a wall, we need not be in the streets and in traffic. We can simply be on the sidewalks. So that becomes a non-issue. Same for pedestrian safety afterwards. If this is a mural on a wall, then it doesn't seem to me like it factors into pedestrian safety. As far as it being removable, so we originally thought that it would need to be removed sooner rather than later, within a year, likely because of the damage that it will suffer under snow and salt and snow plows. Again, though, if it goes up on a wall, it need not be removed as quickly or necessarily at all. you know, it's especially, so what I think makes it especially easy is that if it does need to be removed at some point in the future, then it simply can be painted over. And I think we can work out, it's an inexpensive undertaking at that point. But I think that really just about all of these questions are resolved by having a vertical mural as opposed to being a horizontal one. I actually spoke with a few arts teachers about this during our latest meeting, our last meeting. And we had, you know, some ideas even for an installation similar. Do you know the one with the kids' hands in Bay State Commons? Right, so something that sits there. It's not on a wall, but it's like a wall that's held up by posts, and it's displayed in a park, and it's movable too. So you can move it from place to place. So we thought, if we don't find a building with a wall that we can put this on, we can do something like that, and that would make it too into a community event of sorts, where we could involve the children and, you know, involve the arts community. To be fair, I haven't received a response from the schools yet, although I think that they're, you know, pretty overwhelmed by all the COVID planning. So we'll just keep working on that. The last question that I think this came from Dan last month, right? Are we thinking about the community response, whether it be positive or negative, and how we're thinking about it? So the answer at this point is, we have started these conversations and we don't have all of the things worked out, but we want you to know that we're being thoughtful about it. One thing that we thought would be a good idea would be to have an educational exhibit next to the mural that is that somehow, you know, informs what it is. What is the intention behind this? You know, what are we talking about? What are we trying to get out of this? What is the history of this? You know, what is the artistic motivation for this? We have people in our community who have done similar exhibits and have experience. Like, one has done an exhibit on Martin Luther King, you know, in the community. So we could do something similar to sort of to preempt the negativity and to start the positive conversations. But we're still, it's an ongoing conversation, and we're definitely taking it seriously. So, so I hope that gives you a satisfactory answer.
Thank you. Mike.
I wasn't at the last meeting, so I don't know if this question's been answered yet, but, you know, if this mural goes up, is it going to be presented beforehand before it gets put up, especially if it's in a roadway, or do we know that? Or
I'm sorry, Sergeant Daniels, what do you mean, will it be presented before?
So is it something that, you know, other people will be able to look at, so that it's not offensive? I mean, because there will be some groups, and I'm just being honest, there are going to be people that are going to be offended by it. I mean, we kind of, the police department, we have our pulse on, you know, the emotions of the public, and, you know, that's going to be important. So yeah, I just don't want anything going up that.
Yeah, I can answer that. That's a good question. I guess I just didn't understand it the first time around. So yes, we will have, so what we're planning so far is a mural that says literally Black Lives Matter. And so where the art comes in here is that the different letters are going to be designed by different artists. And so like it's supposed to be pleasing to the eye in that way. Now, the images are going to absolutely be put together and compiled before we put this up on a wall. So I don't know that we will, I haven't really planned for like, for getting approval for a message, you know, for what it looks like, but it certainly will be made public before it goes up. Yeah, I mean, I think we can, I don't see a problem with requesting approval, I guess, once we have the design. But we know what we want it to say. It's not, you know, we have no confusion about imagery. What remains to be open is the artistic vision of each individual artist who will design their letters.
Thank you.
Sure.
What other questions do you all have?
So I'll jump in here. There are, so a lot of, Allah has answered a few of the questions that I had, and then the questions that were posed by town department heads were some of mine as well. I think that a vertical location is, or not location, excuse me, a vertical mural is, you know, conceptually is a better thought than something on the street for a number of different reasons. My concern sort of speaks to ongoing kind of safety, public response, that whole mix of things. And I guess I'm wondering, whether we like it or not, I think a lot of people feel that the Black Lives Matter term, slogan, people that quite honestly don't understand in many cases kind of the complexity of the movement, view it as a political one, as opposed to maybe a human rights one, or one that's about equality or what have you. And so the town as a whole has not, at least my knowledge, my research, and certainly my tenure, has, you know, typically is apolitical about things, right? I mean, that's sort of one of the, in some ways, it's one of the great things about Westborough, and that is it's, you know, whatever you believe, you believe. Now that can lead to good and bad, but the town itself doesn't play a role in kind of matters of politics. So my question is, and all of this is to you, not asking you to answer this right now, but was it considered, were there discussions of, is there a message that is less politically fraught, if you will, that can convey Westborough's, inclusion of, and I certainly understand that it's not all lives matter. I understand that. But is there a message that is as powerful that could be part of, or are there images that could be part of an art display? Because I'm really worried about that, you know, something beautiful goes up and it's supported by many, and then it gets tagged and spray painted by other people that, disagree with it because it is so fraught, as opposed to being a welcoming. I think about places like Natick that have a lot of rainbow flags out. There's a lot of, different symbols, and they've had troubles. I mean, they've absolutely had trouble. So I want this to be a positive experience for Westborough. And so I have some concerns about that as well, in the town kind of sanctioning what would be perceived as by many as a political movement.
Ala, before you answer, may I respond? I just am going back to the really powerful statement that you and the Board of Selectmen and the Town Manager's Office put together with the support of many of us department heads, that said explicitly and unapologetically that we believe Black Lives Matter. And we own the role of those of us who are white in our role and our privilege in benefiting from the systemic racism of the world, of our country, and that we are going to take active steps to dismantle that racism and own our privilege. And I think, if this comes down to a vote, you'll, see my vote, but that this is an opportunity for the town to endorse, to kind of put your money where your mouth is. So it's kind of just a statement. Sarah, I know you want to comment, and then Kim, and then we'll have Ala respond. Sarah.
I understand the hesitation, and that I think we need to go into it knowing that it probably will get destroyed. But I think as a town that's trying to move forward and showing people that we are inclusive, that I think we kind of just have to take a risk at some point. And I think having the educational piece near it is very helpful, because I think, as Shelby is mentioning, a lot of people are taking it as like, they're not educated behind it, of like, oh, we're not just saying Black Lives Matter. Like, we can't say all lives matter because Black Lives Matter need to matter first. So I think people just don't have the education behind it. So I think if we preface the town of like, hey, this is coming, this is why we have it, this is why we want it stated, then we might be okay. But I do agree that it has to be known that it is a risk. I think it's a risk worth taking.
Kim?
So I just, before I have some comments, but before I just want to, for clarity, are you seeking for the Diversity and Inclusion Committee to weigh in favorably on this specific proposal? Is that what you are asking?
Me? Yes, yes, that's what we're asking.
I'm asking Kara as a vote. Is that you're going?
Yes.
Is that
So
what you're seeking?
So I guess because we're spending the time on this and we're doing the investigation and asking the questions, I would see it as appropriate for us to weigh in. And part of the question is, who makes this decision? Is this something that the board makes? Right. And I mean, it's not, we're not even talking about it being on town property. So it's not even necessarily a decision, but.
No, we are. The public road, that the right of way.
Right, but now if she's saying that there's the option of not having it on a road, if we take that out of the picture and you put it on in a park or what have you. But
all right, so let's okay, that's a little bit of what I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
I'm making an assumption that even if it is not the mural in the roadway, that what Allah was proposing, a display would still occur on public property. So if that's the case, my concern is that we as a committee, I'd like to step back from this specific issue, and I'm not sure about the committee weighing in on a very specific proposal in terms of who's responsible for approving it. If it's something that's being displayed on public property, I think there are actually multiple levels, there may be multiple levels. For instance, if it's being displayed, banners, things on the rotary, that comes before the Board of Selectmen. There are also cases where if there's a road closure involved in a project, there are additional departments that weigh in on that, public safety, DPW. Mm-hmm. So depending on the specific proposal, in stepping back without an actual policy or process in place for any sort of, I believe what we are talking about is a public art display. And I've spent a limited amount of time looking at this, but art does enjoy First Amendment protection. I'm afraid that without moving forward or suggesting that the town adopt a policy, identify locations, and have some established criteria, the next request that comes in may be something that is a message that there may be more difficulty with, is broad buy-in, and the town may find itself in a difficult position to say no. I think whatever process we would put in place for approval of art, where it's displayed, how long it's displayed, costs, all of that, that process needs to basically be content neutral. So I think we need to look at, is this committee's role to recommend to the board instead of moving forward with this specific proposal? Look, a proposal came before us. We realized in looking into it, there isn't an adopted policy on displays of public art. We think the town should look into that. I'm not prepared to recommend such a policy right now. I think it's can be a very complex thing. Again, there's some significant legalities involved in that. But, without a policy in place, I'm just concerned that there's a lot of opportunity for other issues down the road.
Yeah, you make a really, really strong point, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And, the Diversity and Inclusion Committee is not going to create that policy about art in a public space, right? That will be a larger process. So I think it's worth sort of going back to Allah's coming to us in the first place for, I guess the way I see it is sort of an endorsement for the project, not the, well, I mean, it's kind of evolved. So now I guess, you know, what is our role in this? We just need to clarify that and decide what the next steps are. And I know Ryan wanted to say something and Alma wants to say something. So let's start with Ryan.
Oh, yes. So going back to Sarah's point about the defacement of the mural and how that's likely to happen, in my honest opinion, I don't believe that having just the educational exhibit next to the mural will deter people from defacing the mural if they're already on their way to commit that crime. They're not going to stop and read the exhibit and change their minds from spray painting the mural. So I believe that in addition to an educational exhibit next to the mural, there should be some sort of public statement given online or through some official means explaining that, making it very clear that we're going to have this mural, this is what it's going to say, and this is the mission, the intent behind it. And so I guess my question would be that if we were to make a statement like that, who would be the one to make that public statement?
Yeah, so there's two things at play. There is the logistics, content neutral of putting a piece of art such as this on public property, to Kim's point. And then there is the question of who, if anyone in the town, including this group, makes a statement of any kind endorsing or in support or not in support of the message. So it sounds like we are looking at two issues. Kim, I see you shaking.
I think that's the part I have some, I feel like we would need to delve deeper into that if that's where we potentially take on some risk and some liability by, as a town, as public officials endorsing artwork, because then you are getting into commentary on content. But if what is being talked about is when a display goes up, that somewhere there's some context provided in addition, you know, that could maybe be part of a policy if we identify an area where art will be displayed, maybe as part of the process when someone applies to use that space. You know, they also include some description or some information, some context of the project that could then be available to the public. Right now, I don't know that anybody could require that because, again, we don't have a process or a policy that we're pointing to.
Thanks. Alma?
Couple things, I guess, because I'm trying to write and listen at the same time. So Kim, are you saying, so you're saying that Joe Smith has a building in the center of town, it's got a blank wall, he can't paint what he wants on the side of the wall?
I was focused on displays on public property.
Okay, but that's what I was concerned about. And then the other thing was, there may be some wording I know that between probably like the building department and I don't know, maybe planning, maybe, I don't know, some of the other, I mean, there is some wording regarding signage and Shelby might know more about the signs and what can get put up and the size of things that can get put up and all of that. So maybe we need to take a look at some of those things and, you know, that might help us to sort of put something together and make a recommendation to the selectmen, knowing that you can only have a sign that's 3 by 5 and it's got to have 10-inch, I mean, whatever, I don't know what it is, but like I said, there may be some guidance there as to what the town's already got in place for the size of signs and displays and whatever, so.
Kim?
That's actually one of the questions based on the limited amount of research I did when I started looking at public art, you know, policies and things like that. There seems to be some legal precedent that in certain cases, when you're talking about public art, it is not, you can't apply the zoning, signage, regulations may not necessarily be applicable. So that's why I said, I think this is an area that would require a fair amount of research. But if it's, you know, if it's public art in a designated public area, those application of, you know, signage regulations may not apply. If it's on private property, it may be a different story.
Rana, and then Ala.
So, and Ala, you can respond to one of the questions I'm going to ask. I just, when listening to this discussion, which is a really very interesting one and pretty profound, it occurred to me that wouldn't it be great if there was a designated wall somewhere that's either public or private property, and you have bids going out to different groups to say, okay, in June of 2021, we're going to be putting up something that's meaningful to a particular group. Do you have a suggestion? And then again, in October, we're going to be using that same wall, maybe dispelling or giving opportunity to disparate groups to say, hey, what a good idea, maybe we'll do this. A way of also creating community, because people could be coming together like Ala's group and saying, hey, maybe we can do this and maybe we could do that. You'd need, of course, an approval process for all of this. And if that approval process now is in place, for example, we wouldn't necessarily have to be going through all of this. So it just occurred to me that what a wonderful thing for a community to do is to have a public space for messages, hopefully very positive ones, but for messages. And Ala, my question to you is, so Worcester did it, and do you have any idea what they had to go through in order to get the approval to do it?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ala.
So let me respond in turn, starting with Shelby. Shelby, no, there is no other message that we would put on a mural than Black Lives Matter. And I think that you asked and answered your own question when you asked it and said, some people erroneously believe that the message is political and not about human rights. You answered that, right? They are wrong when they believe that the message is political and is not about human rights. This message is about human rights, and the town has issued a statement. Kara answered that. She preempted me, was going to say the same thing. The town worded a very beautiful statement in which you said, so I'm going to throw it right back to you and say, did you vote to approve that message with the town personally? Did you, when the town selectmen, when the select people of this town created the message that said, we believe unequivocally that Black Lives Matter?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do that, right? Let's create a public display, a public message that says exactly that, what you and the other select people put on paper, right? And issued as a statement. It is not a political message. It is a human rights issue. There is no other message that we would like to go up on that, you know, mural or on the road or wherever else. That kind of not rocking the boat and inconvenience and worrying about, you know, what might come next. Those kinds of feelings are experienced by people of color every day in this country, in this community, not just in this country, right? So for us to step outside of our comfort zone and, you know, not bow down to these phantom fears of what might happen or what might come, I think this is the least that we can do, truly, the least that a community like Westborough can do to signal our solidarity. To Kim, this is the diversity committee. I came here to ask for support from the diversity committee, which concerns itself with issues of diversity. You shouldn't concern yourselves with signage in this town and how that's going to work. That's for the select people to figure out. You here are supposed to deliberate on issues of how to make this community more welcoming. Once we get the approval from you that you think this is a valuable message that the town of Westborough should transmit far and wide, then I'll take that to the committee, to the select people committee, and we'll work it out there. I don't think that we need to be delaying this another month for us to work out how the signage should go up or what the procedure should be, or whether there should be any rules for, you know, any group out there to put their signage up, or whether that sets a precedent. That's for the select people to figure out. I'm here asking the diversity committee to support diversity in this town. Okay. And Rana's question, excellent question. Yes, I have spoken with the organizers in Worcester. They bypassed their local government and went directly to the city manager. Worcester is a larger city, so they had different procedures. So they had two. So I believe they also have select people. If not, whatever their structure of their local government is, they had two people in the local government who volunteered their time.
Councilmen? I think they called councilmen.
Councilmen, maybe, yes. So council people. So one or two of them took on various tasks. One was fundraising, the other one was publicity and things like that. But the activist group behind this just went directly to the city manager and worked it out with them. They didn't have a lot of pushback. It's a diverse city. So, you know, the bulk of the work was really just kind of to fundraising and finding artists and, you know, figuring out the design and things like that. Hope that answers it. We are in fairly regular communication with Che Anderson, who ran the project there. So we're definitely exchanging experience as we go.
Okay, Mike had his hand up next.
Yeah, no, just a couple points. We're the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So I think some of the points that are being made, Ala, is, you know, we don't want this to be divisive. And despite, you know, what people think on this committee, that may be, I guess, offensive to some people, right? I personally don't feel that way. But I think it's important to be inclusive when we decide to do something like this. So I guess my question is, what kind of support did you get from the minority community, specifically people of color? Because I think that would also be helpful. You know what I mean? And we talked about stakeholders and we talked about, you know, government stakeholders. Mm-hmm. Let's bring other people in, right? And I understand that you feel like this is being delayed, but the concerns that are being brought up by this committee is, you know, they're valid and they can't be dismissed. So I just want to make sure that if you're asking for an endorsement and if that's something that we can do, that we have the blessing of the people that we're here to serve and not just a specific group. So if we are going to put up a Black Lives Matter sign, whatever it is, I don't care what it is, we go to that group, not just a specific committee. We go to that group, we get stakeholders from each minority group and say, hey, what are your thoughts about this? That's the inclusion part. So we have to be cognizant of that and be cognizant of our mandate. Diversity and inclusion. We got to bring everybody together. Just putting something up on the wall, on a wall, I feel is going to be, Shelby, I mean, I completely agree with you. And as a police officer, I see the division all the time. You know, I think people, you know, their intent is good, but the reality is that something like that can be divisive. That, I mean, I hope that makes sense. I'm not trying to, you know, start a fire or a war here, but I just want everybody to really sit down and really think about what we're doing here and getting everybody involved. That's it. Yeah. That's my thought.
Thank you, Mike. And this, I'm going to circle this back to the first conversation we had at the beginning, is around the issue of equity and inclusion. When we're talking about inclusion around racism, that is the messaging for Black Lives Matter. We're talking about racism and systemic racism and racism against Black people. Then when we're talking about inclusion, we're not talking about inclusion of every person. We're talking about equity. We're talking about making sure that marginalized communities are included in the conversation. And I appreciate that we don't know how much Black and Indigenous and people of color have contributed to the We Care proposal. I know that We Care is a diverse group of community members. That's about all I know specifically, other than what Allah has shared with me. But I think where the tension lies is that this is a human rights issue, not a political issue. So we want to be careful. We're not talking about inclusion of people's politics, but we're talking about inclusion of communities that have been harmed and marginalized by systemic racism. And yes, the purpose of this committee is to address town-specific policies and procedures and to make sure that town services are accessible equally to all in Westborough. So this conversation has us walking on a gray line about where our role is. I think I really appreciate that Allah brought this to us. I also recognize that our jurisdiction is limited and where it's unclear about exactly what we can and cannot endorse under the statement, you know, our statement of purpose. I was hoping that we would reach a point of like being able to make a clear decision about what kind of recommendation or endorsement or to, you know, we could make to the Board of Selectmen or to any other decision-making body. I'm not sure that we have that question. I don't know what the motion would be for us to vote on at this point because of all that you've put out there. I guess I need some help figuring out what the next steps are going to be with this process.
If I may, I'd love to answer Chief Daniel's
Sure.
question.
Sure.
It's a fair question, and it's a really good one because we do actually have some sense of support from the minority community in this town. So we have the same groups who were supportive of the vigil and present at the vigil, which is the Sikh community and the various religious organizations like B'nai Shalom and the churches that made it last time. We are speaking with the other communities as well. We Care in particular has many mothers of color and has families with children of color who are in regular attendance. So we have a list of volunteers that's going right now, that's growing by the minute, that has several dozen families who have pledged that they will participate in the event. This is not a niche event, and we are not a niche community, Sergeant Daniels, you saw the turnout. So I'm not here to explain your oppression to you because you're a person of color, but also a police officer. So you walk that tricky line between being both, right? And we're not here to divide, I assure you. We're here to help bring this community together by getting rid of that stuff which divides, which is racism, which is systemic racism. And I think that we are not doing anything revolutionary with a mural that simply repeats the words that have already been spoken and put on paper by this very town's local government, right? So if we need to tabulate the support that we have for the mural, we're happy to do so. And I have asked both Alan and I've reached out to Kara asking if we need to tabulate, you know, a sense of how many members from the community. Both said no, not really. We don't need to, but I'm here to assure you already, as that list of volunteers is, you know, in the few dozen families, right? And we have expressed community support.
Shelby.
So, you know, I share, Carrie, your, you know, frustration, and Allah probably yours as well, that we're not going to be able to come to a conclusion at this meeting. But I think that we have to all appreciate that these things, and I don't want to say these things take time and have everyone roll their eyes and say, oh my God, that just sounds like a privileged white person saying that. I'm just saying we need to do it in a way that is thoughtful to everyone in this community, while absolutely supporting the community statement that the select board made. So, but what I don't want to, what I will have difficulty supporting, not only as part of this committee, but certainly then as a member of 5 as the select board, is, you know, kind of a, let's just kind of run and do, you know, run off and do something that hasn't been thought through in a way that is multidimensional. The vigil that was held was a beautiful event. It was, it was a wonderful event. And I think I want to see positive results from a mural as well. Having said that, there are just some questions here we've got to kind of work through. And I do think the things that might not seem very relevant, and I appreciate your flexibility, are very important. Where does it go? How long does it stay up? I think about the art. We have art displays all the time. I didn't mention this before. We have art displays all the time at the library. I've never heard of, I'm not part of the trustees anymore there, but I don't think anyone ever says, like, is it an appropriate art display to have, I don't know, there could be images that are being displayed there, even though it's art, that people find offensive, right? So we do this. I just want to make sure we do it in a way that is thoughtful and honestly that doesn't tear our community apart, but brings it together. And I don't have those answers today. I mean, so I need to think about it and work with whomever. There was one more thing that I was going to say that I'm totally lost my thought on. Oh, I will tell you that as an example, and this is not going to be welcome, but for as many people that I know will support this, using the town seal cotton gin topic as an example, I would say 2/3 of the, and I've received hundreds of emails, 2/3 of them, about 2/3 I would say, have been in support of change. And a growing 1/3 plus is, we don't want to change. So we can't, and I will tell you, those veiled or not, their reasons for those people are as legitimate as the 2/3, right? So when we think of a community of 18,000 people, we've got to kind of think about, how do we do this in a way that best represents the community's vision for who Westborough is and needs to become, but does that in a thoughtful way. So I want to provide that perspective, because while we are a handful of however many we are, and we might feel like this is a great idea, let's just do this. We are here to represent the entire community. And that's yet another fine line. So sorry to drone on.
Mike, let's say Ema first, and then if you still have something, Mike. Ema.
I think my question is about the mural, is the actual statement, the Black Lives Matter statement. And I guess my question is, how is it going to be differentiated from the social political movement or Black Lives Matter Foundation, Inc., because it is also a corporation, and sort of differentiating that from something political? I just can see there's a lot of interrelatedness with that statement, Black Lives Matter. So I guess a lot of my questions just come more toward, I guess, the copyright, the legal aspect, the political aspect of it all. There's a lot of interrelatedness in all of this. So it produces a lot of questions. And I think I know it sounds like a lot of minutia, but I think delving into, just that statement, because currently Black Lives Matter, yes, I'm Black and I believe my life matters, and Black Lives Matter, I believe that as well. But that statement has become, like I said, there's a foundation now. There are things, organizations from both a political and social standpoint that have adopted that statement. So it's become more than just a statement. And I feel that in order to answer these questions, we need to really focus on the different aspects of that statement. I don't know if that makes sense.
Paula, would you like to respond to that?
Sure. So Shelby, what you said made a lot of sense. I do just want to remind you that you and I had a nearly identical conversation days before the vigil over the phone, where you expressed the same exact concerns, and you know, were really in favor of the vigil not going forward. So the vigil did go forward, and now in retrospect, you think that it's a beautiful and it was a healing event.
Although
So
that's not a true statement, but I'll let it. I was concerned about the safety of our ability to respond to outside groups.
divisiveness was one of the things that you said back then too, which was why I remember now, which was
I was concerned about the safety of all people, given what we are experiencing in not only Massachusetts, but other parts of the country.
okay. So okay, all right. So that's fine. I'm not here to argue about this, but we did have that conversation, which mirrored your concerns very closely. And now in retrospect, you think that this was a healing and nice event. So I urge you to just consider that and think about, you know, the similarities between the two events. And you already know us, you know, the group that I represent, and you know the kind of work that we do. We're a bunch of mothers, really. We have, you know, mostly we're overwhelmingly female in this group. We do have some you know, other members, but we're a bunch of concerned mothers, first and foremost. We're not revolutionaries. We're not here to start any kind of social unrest. So I hope that you will consider that as you think about it. I understand not today, but in the following month, or however long you need to take, you know, to consider this proposal. And to Ima, let me respond also a minute. This is a really good point also. So Black Lives Matter movement was started with a hashtag Black Lives Matter. So it is a movement that arises out of a phrase. And yes, it's true that there exists an organization. It's definitely not a corporation, and it's not an Inc. It is an organization now with a structure. That is true. However, the hashtag and the slogan still lives on, which is separate, has taken on a life of its own. And I think that the reason why the slogan is so important is because it so succinctly summarizes just that very struggle that it encapsulates. And so I think that part of that distinction can really be made prominent in the educational component of this, right? Because I think that it's definitely something that we need to inform people about. It's not, I had exactly one person right before the vigil reach out to me and say, but hey, don't you know that the Black Lives Matter organization are all Marxists, and you know they have these twisted motivations and et cetera, and have you reached out to them, and are they going to be here? And I said, hey, we're not affiliated with the Black Lives Matter organization. We are using the hashtag and the call to action separately. I think that could be made really prominent in the educational component, the history of the phrase. There are books about this now. I just recently checked out a book from the children's department at the library called hashtag Black Lives Matter. And the book is about the history of the social movement aimed at 4th, 5th grade, maybe 6th grade, a large, picture book. So I think there's a lot of sort of informational material to cover there.
Thank you. Mike, at one point you had your hand up. I don't know if you still do, but I do want to wind down this conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ima, I'm getting ready to close the conversation, but final word.
A final word is I just wanted to respond to Alice's comment. I actually went to the blacklivesmatter.com, and when you go to that, they actually do say that they are a foundation and an incorporation. So that's why I want to make sure that, you know, the message that you are trying to bring my advice is just clarifying that message or making sure it's very clear and how it's different from blacklivesmatter.com, because now it's no longer a hashtag, it's thrown into something or expanded into something greater. So I guess that is my advice to you, is just clarifying your focus, not just the intention, but what is the focus and what is the focus, the intent, the purpose, and the goal of what the mural is trying to achieve. I think that just needs to be clarified.
All right. I'm going to do an agenda check. We're going to figure out how to close this agenda item today and figure out where we're going next. So for closing this item today, we are not at a point where we can make a motion to vote to endorse or approve or make a recommendation on anything, given all that has come to be. I propose that we move this to an agenda item next month, and that in the meantime, Ala, please continue to evolve your proposal based on some of the feedback. I don't know, the vertical versus horizontal. If you have any changes to your proposal, given the feedback, the questions today that you'd like to share with me, that I can share with the group, I'd be happy to do that. I don't know if this has to be a formal thing or not a formal thing, but Kim, Shelby, where does it need to go as far as like procedure goes? Yeah, Kim.
So we don't have, and that was part of my point. We don't have procedure. We don't have something. And what I just wanted to say is you could certainly entertain if anybody had a motion today, but it doesn't appear that we do. So I think the one thing that Ala, given that there's no requirement that this committee weigh in, Ala doesn't have to wait to hear from the committee. So I want to be clear on that.
I guess I should have been more specific. Is there anything that we can say to like separate, not having Ala wait for us, but just with the topic that came up, can we just put in a plug to create some policy and procedure around this kind of thing? Is that, I don't know how we would go about supporting the town in something that's not our jurisdiction to look at creating POC and procedure for public displays of art, as you had mentioned earlier.
I think if we go back to our purpose and we think about this committee's purpose is to promote diversity, equitable access, you know, when we can see it at the bottom of the agenda, right? So if this committee feels that having such a policy around that having a policy that would address, you know, displays of art on public property would further align with the purpose of this committee to ... then yes, it could be brought forward to that the proper entity develop that policy. Now, the Board of Selectmen might say, I don't really know. I'm really speaking off the cuff here. The Board of Selectmen might say it's the job of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee to draft the policy and bring it to the Board of Selectmen for review. I don't know. You know what I mean? Or because it involves art, we recommend that input from the Cultural Council, which is what I just put in the chat, and diversity and inclusion, and I don't know whom else kind of, get weigh in on it. I don't know. Or Selectmen, you take it, we'll take it, and through our town manager, kind of pull in the necessary folks and do that. So, but this committee, I think absolutely could put that recommendation forward and present that to the Selectmen.
So the recommendation being that we're recommending to the Selectmen and to explore creation of a policy for display of public art, which has, that need has arisen out of this conversation.
Right. I think to Kim's point, it's a policy that would be, it has to be content neutral because of the nature of public art, right? Right. So, yes. So we could have a motion to make that recommendation to the Board of Selectmen to create such a policy that is content neutral, because having that policy would make our jobs easier as a committee. So would anybody
put it into words?
Would anybody like to make a motion and formulate the words?
Sure. Yeah, and I'm not sure that you need the words content neutral in there. I think that's
right.
That's a
that's
legal
implied.
issue.
Right.
That's implied, yeah.
But maybe let me take a crack. So
Right,
I
just
move
talk
that
slow
the
so I can
Diversity and
write it.
Inclusion Committee propose that the Board of Selectmen consider adoption of a policy addressing display of public art in public places.
I move it or second it, whichever. I think that's fine.
So I think Kim has moved.
Wait, hold on for Alma.
Sure.
Policy to 4.
Ema, was it something we said?
All right, so Kim, the Diversity Inclusion Committee proposed that the Board of Selectmen consider a policy for displays of public art
On public property.
Yeah, I don't know if there's such a thing as public art, right? Because it's usually private. I would think it's art on public property.
Property.
Yep.
I think public art is definitely a thing.
Okay, so I would just say art on public property. Then it's inclusive of. Yep. Okay, good.
I'm better at written word than spoken.
You've done good.
Very well done, actually. So Ema needs to leave in 5 minutes. So Kim, you have so moved. Yes.
Second.
And Rana, did I hear you second the motion?
Yes, and Mike did too, I noticed.
Okay, now discussion. Okay, and Mike also seconded the motion. We have a third motion. Okay, so any further discussion before we vote? Okay, so yes is in support of the motion and no is not in support of the motion. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Say your name and your yes or no, starting with Ema.
Ema, yes.
Sarah.
Connors, yes.
Mike.
Mike Daniels, yes.
Rana.
Rana Rappaport, yes.
Dan.
Barber, yes.
Ryan.
Ryan Nguyen, yes.
Kim.
Foster, yes.
Alma.
Alma, yes.
Shelby.
Marshall, yes.
Presley, yes. Unanimous vote. All right, we have gone over, but there is one agenda item that we need to revisit, if not today, very quickly, very soon. And that is the issue that was brought before us 2 months ago, and we revisited last month about making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen and maybe others to adopt Indigenous Peoples Day as a holiday here in Westborough to replace what we now recognize as Columbus Day. I say that needs to be addressed quickly because that date is upon us and it will happen before our next meeting. And while I know it, if we make a recommendation one way or another, I don't know how official, any action would be, but I think the statement, any kind of endorsement that we make would potentially have meaning. So I propose that we continue today with that agenda item, but I want to see what people are saying. Alma.
Okay, so I did, I made a couple phone calls. I did call Congressman McGovern's office, and currently, because, there's not anything else going on in Washington, there is nothing official about changing this. And then I also spoke with Senator Eldridge, and there is a bill before the Massachusetts legislature, but he said right now, basically, actually, I should probably read we can kind of do what we want with it. Hold on, let me find it.
Dan and Ema have to go.
Okay, he said, yes, there is a bill, but the town can take independent action. And apparently, of course, it's Cambridge that has already changed it and has a whole different agenda for the day. And I said to him, so that means that the board can change the holiday. And he said, no, just celebrate the holiday. So
Okay.
I guess if the Board of Selectmen in Westborough chooses to change the name of Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day and go forward with it at that point, that they certainly can do that.
Thank you for doing
I
this
was
work,
wrong.
Alma. Kim.
Sorry, I know we're time limited here. Just to that very point, I just looked at the calendar. So the board's agenda has already been posted for Monday's meeting on the, Tuesday's meeting on the September 22nd. The board doesn't meet again after that until Tuesday, October 13th, which would be the day after. So just from a pure timing.
Okay.
It doesn't mean the committee can't take a vote now and be on the record, but just if you're looking for more formal action, we may be up against a little bit of a timing glitch.
I appreciate that. Shelby.
So I just want to add to it. I had done some research as well. And so Amherst, Northampton, Brookline, Cambridge, and Alma, I'll email this to you, so don't write it all down. Somerville and Great Barrington have all made changes to celebrate this. There are, House Bill 3665 did not move out of committee. And it's supposed to be reintroduced in January 2021. Again, this is at the state level. There is a separate bill, Senate 247 and House 443, that's addressing, prohibits native type mascots, and Senate Bill 1877 and House 2776, which addresses changing the Massachusetts flag and seal. So there are several different kind of elements that are swirling around a lot of what we're talking about, but specifically around Indigenous people. And so we should watch those. Alma, I'll send you a quick email so you have that encapsulated. I do think that, to Kim's point, while it would be good for, I will make a motion that that the diversity, sorry, my phone's ringing. Diversity and Inclusion Committee supports Westborough recognizing, I don't have the date, but what is traditionally known,
12th.
Thank you, as Columbus Day as Indigenous Peoples Day, if that is the correct, I apologize. I don't know
the second, I would say it was the second Monday in October.
Second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples Day.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Sarah, second. So discussion, I just want to contribute to the discussion by saying that Kristen Vincent of the school committee contacted me, and I know I copied Sarah Connors and Amber Bach in my exchange with Kristen. They have also had this same request posed to them for the schools, and they are wanting our input. So I know that Kristen is listening to this meeting and is going to take what we decide and what we say back to the school committee as part of their discussion. So I just wanted to let you all know that. Sarah, is there anything else you'd like to add from that conversation with the schools? Anything else that I missed?
I think would like to reiterate that I do believe the schools are on board because of the school calendar stating that that Monday is called Indigenous Peoples Day. So I think they are just kind of waiting to see what the town does, but that it has gone out to families as Indigenous Peoples Day.
Okay, great. I let Kristen know that the schools certainly are not in this committee's jurisdiction, but that we are very interested in aligning ourselves across the town when we have the opportunity to. So we have a motion before us. Any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to do a roll call vote, starting with Shelby.
Unmuted, Marshall, yes.
Rana.
Rappaport, yes.
Mike.
Daniels, yes.
Sarah.
Connors, yes.
Alma.
Yes.
Ryan.
Wynn, yes.
And Kim.
Foster, yes.
And Presley, yes. All right. So I am going to propose that we defer community issues and announcements while I want to make that a centerpiece of our meeting, it won't be today. I will say just on that note that I invite the public to weigh in to any of the discussions we're having by contacting us at our email address, which is diversity@town.westborough.ma.us, or calling me directly as the chairperson. And I will review what we're doing. I'm going to, by the way, include that email address on future agendas for posting so people know that they can also email us prior to a meeting. I'm going to be adding a parking lot to our kind of regular minutes. We have 2 motions to bring to the Board of Selectmen. And we already reviewed all the steps we're going to take about exploring what other towns are doing. Any other action steps that I missed repeating today? Okay. Yes, Rana?
I just wanted to make a comment. I think that the discussions have been really very, very deep and provocative. And I think that this is a very good way to try to figure out really where we're going.
I very much appreciate these conversations. I think we have an excellent mix of people on this committee. I appreciate the respect with which everyone has shared their opinions and thoughts and ideas. And I think it was really productive, even if it's sometimes awkward and difficult. And so I think we just will keep on keeping on. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, Shelby, a second?
Second.
Rana, second. All right, I'm going to do a roll call vote to adjourn. Shelby?
Marshall, yes.
Rana?
Yes.
Ryan?
Win, yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Sarah?
Connors, yes.
Alma? Presley, I saw the yes. Presley, yes. All right, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.